Public participation guidelines. We're using Zoom for this meeting, which allows for the public to participate in the meeting as an attendee. The chair can request that the members of the public provide their names for purposes of keeping accurate meeting minutes. Attendees must register to participate. Attendees will join in listening mode and can click to raise their hand if they wish to speak. The chair will call on those who raise their hands in attempt in an order they were raise their hands. All questions shall be directed to the chair. As a preliminary matter, this is Brian Sullivan of the Affordable Housing Trust. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present. Can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Brooke Moore.
Here.
Dave Iverson.
Here.
Meg Browers.
Here.
Penny Dye.
Here.
Rima Sherry.
Here.
And Sean Todd Murphy.
Here.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond affirmative. Tucker Holland.
Here.
Vicky Marsh.
Here.
And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Stephen Hollister.
Here.
Great. Good afternoon. This is an open meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust is being conducted remotely pursuant to the Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the trust is convening via video conference via the Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating via video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that folks may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless otherwise noted. We will turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover ground rules for effective, clear conduct of our business to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each member or each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, we'll go down the line of members, inviting each to provide any comment, questions, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If you wish to engage in any conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged. Finally, each vote will be conducted by a roll call. With that, we'll move to the first item on the agenda and call the meeting to order. The second item is an approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Dave.
Second.
I think I got Dave moved to approve the agenda and Brooke seconded by roll call. Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Ann Kuspa. Ann Kuspa, sorry, you're not a member. I'm just going in order of the pictures. Meg, Penny, Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Okay. Moving to the next item of minutes. We'll note that all trust meetings, open meetings are recorded and available on the town website. Any of the past meeting minutes will be taken up at a future July meeting. We'll move from item 3 to item 4. Update from Tucker on the housing office manager and real estate specialist position.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to update the board. I think folks know that Ken has returned to the island, which is fantastic, and is recovering at home. And I just wanted to share that news with people. The housing office manager position is still open, and so we are still working to fill that and would welcome applicants.
Shanta?
Thank you. How can folks apply? Because I had recommended someone look into it, and they said they could find it on the HR page.
I will check with HR. I mean, to my knowledge, it should be an open position listed there, but if Chantal, I don't know if you have like an email contact or what have you for the person, but I could direct something to them or have HR get in touch.
Okay, I'll send an email to you and HR and CC her on it. You guys can take it away.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chantal. Anyone else with questions on that? Seeing none, we'll move to public comment. Are there any members of the public here today that would like to comment? Any members of the board as members of the public? Tucker?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to briefly report on the Mass Housing Partnerships Housing Institute. They did a 2-day session this year, first day virtually, second day in person. I thought this was perhaps the best institute they've ever put on. Chantal and I both participated in the virtual event on day one. I'm not sure if others were there as well, but we particularly had communicated afterward about the ideas and approaches that were contained in a public engagement section put on by Lily Linke of CHAPA, and we are going to distribute that deck to the board. And I think there's some things that they have used and engage communities with that have been quite effective. And I think there's some learnings for us that we could utilize going forward. Chantal,
Awesome.
do you want to add anything to that?
I thought it was great. I've never attended any of the past events, but it was so informative, and it felt like very accessible information for a topic that can be a little confusing at times. So I was really excited. It was super engaging, and I learned a lot, and I really hope that some of the takeaways that I think are applicable to us on island that we'll actually be able to put in place. I enjoyed it. I would love to attend next year as well.
Awesome. That's great feedback. Thank you, you two, for one, taking the time, but also providing the feedback. Any other public comment? Seeing none, close public comment for today. There's no item on item 6 listed, closing costs. We'll move from there to item number 7, action request for housing, Nantucket for supplemental funding at 31 Fairgrounds. Tucker, do you want to open and then we'll pass to Ann for presentation, or?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I won't take a lot of time. I mean, the board is obviously very familiar with the project and also familiar with the challenges in the construction environment over the course of the past few years. I'm going to let Ann, get into the particular requests. I think the good news here is the light is at the end of the tunnel. I think this is going to be a very handsome project that is going to serve important community need, and I'll let Ann take it from here.
Great, thank you, Tucker. Ann?
Thank you. Ann Cuspa, Executive Director of Housing Nantucket. Just want to start out by saying thank you for addressing our requests so quickly, and also for all the members of the construction subcommittee that have been working with us to get to this point. As Tucker said, the project's moving along very well. It's beautiful. If anyone has gone by lately, every time I go there, I'm just amazed and so proud at not only the product that's being built, but also the teams that are working there and just engaging with the workers and the builder himself. So thank you.
And can I interrupt you just for a moment? Would be a nice time if you could share, I understand there's some an email that went around late. If you could screen share any of that. There's a progress photo page. It'd just be helpful to include the public on some of that. Sorry, I didn't mean to,
Or Anne, would you like me to do that or whatever's?
If you have it, I have it right here too. I
Well,
can share my screen.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Let's see. No, it's gonna show up in my browser. Sorry, just give me
Tucker, why
one.
don't you go ahead and share while, and great, thank you. So, sorry, Ann, I just thought it was helpful to see the visuals while you were talking.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. So these are pictures from June 1st. So I mean, every week there's some significant changes to the site. And so you can see things are happening over there. Why I'm here today is because there's been some cost overages. So in other words, what's been going on? I'm here to ask for another adjustment to our contract, and we have a change order that's being worked out between us and the builder. But basically, this is the third change order, and just want to kind of go through what the first two were all about. The first one was due to changes that were made through the HDC process, and also the square footage of the livable space was increased. So that was the first change order. Second change order, I think we all know about the construction environment that we're working with here. It seemed like this project was timed perfectly imperfectly. In other words, you know, when we're looking for sidewall or shingles was like the peak, and you know, everything that we were ordering seemed like it was at the top of the market. So that's been unfortunate, and that's been affecting what the project costs as well. So that's kind of in a nutshell, but I have Steve Hollister, who's been working with us the whole time as our owner's agent. He can provide some context as far as what this project costs with respect to the, you know, per square foot and per building, which is in line with what the rest of the market is seeing right now. I think another factor here why we're back, we underestimated the costs in the beginning too. So that's another thing. But at the end of the day, we're going to get a really fine product, and I'm really excited about that. It's going to be available for generations. So I know the community will be able to enjoy that. And then just finally, the number that we're here today with is a not to exceed number. We're hoping to come in under this 2.5 million extra in funding, and we'll do our best as we've been doing all along the way. But it's so difficult to come back, you know, we have to change our loan agreements and everything else we thought, and the town's process too. So we thought we'll just go in and ask for the 2.5 million now, but we're really hoping that the final number comes in less than that. So I think that's all I wanted to say here. But if anyone has any questions, we're here and we can answer them.
Great, thank you. And did you mention that Steve was going to make a presentation related to cost? Or Dave, do you want to ask your question now?
Yeah, if I can, it's just, what is the percentage of overrides to the total cost of the project?
So I think that's a great segue probably to Steve.
Sure. Yes, I can speak to that. So, firstly, I can sort of corroborate everything that Ann said. We're doing well. We're getting close, and it's going well. There have been 3 change orders. The first, to Ann's point, was a cost increase due to the HDC and planning board review process. Basically, we went from 5 structures to 8 and roughly 18,000 square feet to 21,000 square feet. So the scope of the project grew. After that first change order, the next two change orders effectively add roughly 60% to the cost of the original construction contract. I've provided a context document. The updated version of that went out this morning. To Ann's point, this is a not to exceed number. The hope is that the project may still come underneath these amounts. Every single project is different. And so what I've tried to do for the purposes of comparison is sort of isolate the hard costs of the project. So what you do is you peel out some of the soft costs, an early development fee, some costs associated with the HDC and planning board process, permitting costs, that sort of thing, to drill down on just the hard costs of the actual construction. And then as a next step, also peel out the site infrastructure costs, landscaping, utilities, road work, sidewalks, in order to try and get a closer to apples per square foot comparison between this project and say any other in the market. And on that point, it bears mentioning that every project's different. The specifications change, the designs change, and so there are a million nuances that play into these numbers. It's a bit of an oversimplification, but it's a useful metric for sort of a rough analysis. And in this particular case, the total hard costs on a per square foot basis are $517 per square foot. But that disregards the value of the basements. So we have full basements for all of these buildings, and those are being utilized for mechanical space, laundry, and storage. And so they're being partially finished in order to accommodate all of that. And so there's real value there. And so what we've done in order to assign a value to that is basically discount that square footage at a rate of 33%. And so we've said that rather than taking the entirety of the basement and saying this is additional useful square footage, we're calling it sort of a 33% value relative to a fully finished above ground square foot of space. And so the outcome of that analysis is that the cost per square foot is really kind of more truly about $445 per square foot. In this market, that's really good value. The best comp that I have available was a project completed in 2021. It's roughly analogous. I can't get into the specifics of location just for sort of client privacy, all that kind of thing. But that project came in at $436 a square foot. And so on a comparative basis, this $445 would be 2% more than that figure from 2 years ago. And if we were disregarding the value of the basement completely, which would be the most unfair analysis, this would reflect an 18% premium over that other comparable project from 2 years ago. So I think that pretty easily explains that this is good value in the market. We wish that the process of revealing the pricing changes could have been a little smoother. Hindsight's 2020. But today in this market, this is going to be good value. It's going to be a good project that the town can be proud of. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the context document if you have any.
Great, thank you, Steve. I gotta open up my screen so I can see all the members. I guess I'm looking to members for questions. Brooke?
So by choosing to go with a not to exceed number, well, let me put it this way. This needs to be the last request. I think that with the select board approval process, you guys are going to get asked some hard questions. I know you're going to get asked some hard questions. So I just want to feel confident going in as the select board rep that this amount's going to let you finish the project out.
Yes. that's exactly the intent. That's how Billy has represented it. It basically, there's an additional buffer added on to the numbers in order to accommodate that. And so that's why he's confident in the number. And certainly I'll defer to Billy there, but that's my answer.
Thank you, Steve.
And just, if I may, Brian, to follow up, I get it. I get that what's happened in the market, it's been crazy. I mean, I've done some projects for my church, and getting shingles is a problem, never mind what you pay for them. And so things are just insane. So it is a beautiful project, and we are all going to be extremely proud of it. And all the comments I get from the community is it looks amazing. So I'm glad we're doing it well.
Penny,
Oh, Billy, why don't you go to Billy first? His hand's up.
Belly?
Mr. Chair, I was going to give a little more detail to that buffer, but I think I'll keep that between Steve and his worksheet and say that the buffer as proposed is significant.
Thank you, Billy. Penny, back to you.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to get into this or not, but I know we have had extensive discussions internally and to date about some sort of municipal employee preference for this project. Does that have anything to do with this final ask?
So I'll come to Tucker to, I guess, look for an update on how that would connect to DHCD. You're on mute, Tucker.
Sorry. Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I think as folks are aware, hiring, keeping key town positions is a challenge, like it is for many nonprofits and businesses across the island. And we had approached DHCD about the possibility of requesting a special local preference that would limit it to the one category of municipal employees for a portion of the total local preference. So let's just say for up to 50% of the local preference, we would like to have potentially the local preference limited to the one of the four categories that are recognized, which is folks who work for the town. In addition, we want to have that apply not just for the initial fill up, which is normally what happens for the 80% AMI and less units. And we also want to extend this to those units above 80% AMI, which DHCD has less, less, call it jurisdiction over. However, given that all of these units will count on the SHI, they will have some opinion about. So, we've been in touch with Housing Nantucket about jointly requesting this of DHCD. Housing Nantucket is supportive of that request. And so the next step here is to formalize it in writing. Actually, and I need to change my own lexicon. It is now the HLC, the Department of Housing and Livable Communities. So no longer DHCD, now EOHLC. And we need to submit a written request with some documentation that they have suggested including, such as the demographic makeup of municipal employees relative to the general population and so forth. And that will go in next. So I think this is an important component of what we might consider doing here. You know, we're obviously Housing Nantucket doesn't control what DHCD decides to do ultimately, but you know, Ann and I have spoken about, you know, Housing Nantucket using its best efforts to assist us in this request.
Thank you, Tucker. Go ahead, Penny.
Yeah, Brian, just a quick follow-up to that. So is it accurate to say that we are committed to, as a group, do we need to vote on this? Committed to working towards providing some percentage of these units for municipal employees who meet the requirements financially?
So go ahead, Brooke.
I support that fully, and I think if I could take this board's support to the select board as part of our motion, should we approve this, I think that will be helpful in terms of garnering support at the select board level for this.
So I'll make a motion because I don't think it should be done by Brooke. I'll make a motion that we. Is that right?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue to proceed towards investigating the feasibility and implementation of having municipal employees who qualify occupy some percentage to be determined in the future of these units in perpetuity.
So before we vote on that for continued discussion, actually, can I, is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Dave. Penny, I wanted to ask Ann, can you describe to us your process when the project is complete, how you will be marketing these units and what would describe your best efforts?
Sure. So you're saying the way that the affirmative fair housing marketing plan is written today?
Yeah, I'd like to understand yes, for the 80% units, and then any units that fall outside of that, I'd like to understand how you'll be marketing those units to whomever and the selection process, just so everybody understands what that will look like.
Sure. Well, like Tucker says, we are open to however DHCD or, HLC, is it? Would like us to proceed to give a municipal employee preference. We see the need, we fully understand, and in fact, as a landlord, we like municipal employees as our tenants because they have steady income and all sorts of other good references and whatnot. So the way that the advertising will go for these units, we've got 80% AMI are in one segment, so you've got 25% of the units serving the 80% AMI bracket, and then the rest, so that's up to 150% AMI. So 75% of the units will be serving the ones up to 150% AMI. So easiest one to consider is the 80% AMI units. Though there's a very extensive affirmative fair housing marketing plan that gets approved by HLC up at the state level that says that we'll advertise the lottery will be open for 60 days prior to the lottery, and we have to advertise it in all sorts of different places and to make sure that we hit all of the demographics that we need to. So basically the point is they want to make sure that the pool of applicants represents the demographics of the protected classes within our pool, that it mirrors what the community-wide demographics are, specifically race. So we need to make sure that we have equal or exceed the race makeup that the census says that our community has. We need to make sure that's within our pool. So then we'll have a lottery, and that's just, pulling all the names of the applicants, qualified applicants, before we have the lottery. So you pull all the names, and then you start going down the list and start doing background checks and figure out if those tenants, the selected applicants would be good tenants. Can they afford the rent? Do they have enough in the bank? Whatever the criteria are, and then we can offer them a lease. So that's how that works. And then the other 75% of the units serving the higher incomes that aren't overseen by HLC, those will just go to our ready to rent list, which has, you know, last time I checked, it was 316 or so households on there who are pre-qualified and will go into, say it's a 1-bedroom that we're trying to fill with 100% AMI. Then we have a filter that we can sift out from our ready to rent list who earns 100% AMI and qualified for a 1-bedroom. Then we make short lists, and then we start calling those applicants to see who is available, you know, who needs housing, who would like it, who can afford the rent, and that sort of thing. Check their background, then offer them a lease.
Great, thank you, Ann. So one of the reasons I just wanted to make sure I understood that was, so I understand the HLC, HLC's requirement for the municipal employee for the 25% as discussed, but in the 75% of the units, is this group on the commitment that is the motion being made by Penny and seconded? Are we committed to a portion of the 75% for municipal employees, and how will that work with the ready to rent list becomes my question. And
Right. From our
so as
operational
we're voting on
standpoint,
something, yeah, where are we
I
at?
mean, sorry to interrupt, but from our operations standpoint, I think already we do have municipal employees on the ready to rent list, but we accept the applications on a rolling basis. It's not a first come, first serve. So I would think that the municipality would be putting outreach materials into their employee base and encouraging them to fill out the ready to rent application if they don't already have an application into us. And then once we're trying to pick our 1-bedroom tenant, then we would be able to choose some of those applicants. But we need an application before, you know, they need to meet our application criteria in order for us to offer them a unit.
Okay, so I do want to make sure that we're defining what reasonable best efforts are, because it is a legal term. So when we're looking for that, I want to make sure we define as a board on the approval. I'm going to come to Meg and then to Penny. Meg's hand went up first. This is still on the discussion on the motion and
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just wanted to ask if, for myself and the public, included in municipal employees would be teachers?
So I'm seeing some head shaking, but I'm going to defer to Tucker to answer that question.
I believe that, teachers would be considered part of the municipal employee pool, but we will confirm that.
Great. Penny, back to you.
Two things. I just want to remind everybody that 80% AMI right now is 108. It's in excess of $108,000, and 150% AMI is over 200,000. So I just think we ought to keep that in mind for perspective here. Secondarily, my question really through you, Mr. Chair, to Ann would be, and I guess this is really a Vicky question as well, is it legal for Ann in her process, her selection process, to have as a criteria municipal employee, similar to good credit or references?
So first to Vicky.
So in order for us to be able to use the local preferences and to change this, we're going to need to have HLC approve this. It's not, it's not a guarantee. There is specifically in their guidelines language that says that local preference, and it's defined in a very special way, is at their purview. So we have to demonstrate as a community that we need to have a local preference. And then above and beyond that, we need to be able to provide them evidence that we need it to apply to a special class of municipal employees. So we need their approval before you can even contemplate doing this definitively. And then that would be outlined in the regulatory agreement, which will, be signed as well.
Just so I'm clear, because I understand that there's a difference between the 80% AMI and below and then above. But what you're describing, Vicky, would apply to all AMI levels. Is that correct?
So the regulatory agreements and these regulations apply to 80% and below. So it's, we could certainly craft something and try to see how receptive HLC is to having it apply to all of them. But at the very least, we have to work with them to get the approvals for the 80% and below. So, yeah.
Thank you. I'll come to Brooke and then to Penny.
So for me, I think what I want to hear, and maybe there's some clarification to be made in Penny's motion, is that Housing Nantucket will make its best efforts to work with the municipal housing director to allow for municipal employee preference to the greatest degree possible for this project. And obviously subject to HLC approval, because while ensuring that all these units count on the subsidized housing inventory, because that's really that priority in my mind is higher than allocating units to municipal employees, because we need this, correct, Tucker, for safe harbor and for our we need it for our subsidized housing inventory for sure. So that's priority number one. And then under that priority would be to use the local preference and municipal employee preferences to the greatest extent possible, subject to approval by HLC. And then I would say that as far as the process for allocating units to municipal employees, this would be perhaps a question to Vicky. If and when we have approval from HLC to allocate X units at different income levels for municipal employees, do we want to create a different allocation mechanism for those units? And I'm thinking about this in terms of as a benefit to the town for the extensive financing of this project. That's sort of how I'm thinking of it in my head. And so I want to make sure we're not getting in the way of making sure these are subsidized on the SHI, and that we are working with town administration to the greatest extent possible legally, that these units get allocated where they're needed the most for employee recruitment and retention for the town, which is the problem when we think about municipal preference that we're trying to solve for here.
So I'll come to Vicky before coming to you, Penny. I'm sorry, 1 second.
No, I just quickly, I want to say that Brooke essentially said everything I was going to say, so you don't need to come to me.
Great. Vicky, for you to address some of that and then to Tucker.
So I want to just clarify one thing. So when you read the regulations, the way they're currently drafted, 70% of the affordable units can be applied for local preference. So it's not like basically the way it is right now is you cannot take 100% of these units and give them all to local preference, be it municipal employees or some other classes that you want to give them to. So that's one thing. So you're not just looking, I mean, if you want more than 70%, you're going to have to probably, again, try to convince DHCD to do that. And I think that's going to be, I don't know whether you really want to do that, because you may want to open it up to other groups, not just the local preference. And for that reason, they may not want to go along with that anyway, because you may not be able to attract a wide enough pool if you just focus on the local preference. So that's one thing. And I know you had another comment, Brooke, and I'm so sorry.
Can I clarify? So
yeah, please.
It really was. And I didn't say it. It's understood in my brain. I should have said it out loud. I know there's a limit on local preference. And then there is a subset of local preference that can be set aside for municipal employees.
Right.
And it's like 15%. It's not a huge number. Right.
Right.
So it's not like we would be setting aside all of these units for municipal employees, but to the greatest extent allowable under the regulations is the goal that I would want to achieve.
Right. And
without pushing the envelope or risking shy listing or any of those other things.
right, because the other thing is, you can always sort of set limits for AMIs that are above the 80%, if you want to try to achieve those. And the other thing is, the town employee income levels. So I'm not sure where they would fall in the range of 80% and below, or 80% and up to 110, or I'm just not really sure. So that's something that's a question that you may want to explore to see where those people that you're trying to house would fit in also into the income levels.
Thank you, Vicky. For me, just a quick comment before I come to Tucker. I think that it's not DHCD, and I can't remember already. AHC it is going to kind of set the regulation for the 80% and below. But to me, it's important the 80% and above that we're establishing what it looks like with Housing Nantucket in the process. Tucker, thank you for putting that up. Tucker, back to you. HLC.
HLC, that's it. It'll take us all a little bit of time to adjust. So having spoken directly to DHCD about this a couple of times, maybe I can shed a little light, like just to clarify a couple things. So these units are already on our shy list, and they already have contributed to Safe Harbor, and they no longer are actually part of what constitutes our current period of Safe Harbor. So we do want to ensure, obviously, that they stay on our SHI list. So what are we talking about exactly here? So this is a 22 unit project. So 25% of that is 6 units. So 6 units will be restricted at 80% AMI, as Ann noted, and then the remainder will be above that. And what we have talked to DHCD about is the opportunity potentially, and this is where, as Vicky said, we need to make our case to them and they need to make a determination. But what we're talking about is with 6 units at 80%, 70% of those is 4 units. So we're talking about 4 units that are subject to local preference, period. We're talking about up to 50% of what is subject to local preference having this special designation of just municipal employees. So we're talking about 2 units out of those 6 80% AMI units. When we go to the units above 80% AMI, 70% of the 16 units would be 11 units. So we're talking about up to 5 units of those that are above 80% AMI that we would seek the potential special, I'll call it local preference, but as Vicky noted, local preference technically really only applies to the 80% AMI units and less, but we're being candid and straightforward with DHCD that we would like to also direct some of these units that are outside of the 80% jurisdiction to municipal employees who do qualify. And we know that while they don't technically have jurisdiction over those units, they have an opinion because they all count on the SHI list.
Thank you, Tucker. Are there Follow-up questions, Rima?
So basically, it's up to UNN to demonstrate need to HLC. And how would you do that? By interviewing department heads? Anecdotally, would you need actual statistics? And
So I think it's pretty straightforward for the community to demonstrate the need for local preference. I mean, Ann just talked about 300 families on the ready to rent list, and we have similar information from Richmond and so forth. So to demonstrate to them that a local preference generally is in order is probably not a huge lift. Ann and I are going to need the assistance of the HR department on providing some of the demographic information that DHCD is going to have an interest in relative to the makeup of town employees relative to the general population.
well, I'm very much in favor of this, and I'd love to vote on the motion if it's including all of this stuff.
Are there any more questions on the motion and kind of the friendly amendment? I may ask it to be restated, Brooke, in just a moment. I know it was Penny's motion, but I think she's going to have Brooke restate it. Meg, or not? Meg?
Yes, please. If we, in going back to the communication method and best practice for getting this word out to all town employees, including school personnel, maybe we could come up with some kind of a email or a press release or something that you could share, Ann, with your constituents. We could share in our housing newsletter. The town could link to on their website, and we could also put it out through the superintendent's school list so that we know that everyone knows of this opportunity, because I think there may be a misconception in the community about those percentage AMIs that qualify you, and a lot of school personnel may not realize they could qualify. So I think if we could all join in on that, that would make me feel really good about the process.
Great, thank you, Meg. Okay, so I'm going to come to Penny to restate the motion. And this is, go ahead.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the Affordable Housing Trust supports the efforts of Tucker and Ann to work with HLC and whomever else they need to investigate the feasibility of committing a certain percentage of the units at 31 Fairgrounds Road to municipal employees going forward and in perpetuity. That part of it is important to me. I don't want to see somebody have one of these units and then they leave and it goes to somebody else that doesn't work for the town.
Can I make a friendly amendment? It's that it's the highest percentage allowable
Yep,
versus some percentage.
yep.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Dave. Any continued discussion? Are we ready to vote? Vote by roll call. Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's and I. So now we'll come back to the original reason we're here and kind of the request. And look to see, are there any more questions about either the percentage of overage, the square footage? Penny?
Oh, no, I have a question about grant versus loan.
Great, nice segue. Thank you. Penny?
Oh, just that this has been requested as entirely as a grant. And I'd like Tucker to fill us in on how we've handled this in the past in terms of the ratio of grant to loan. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Tucker.
Sure, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that question. Actually, I may take a moment to just pull up the exact figures, Mr. Chair, but it generally I think as you all will recall, the original amendment had come, or change order had totaled 1,666,000. That was roughly a 50-50 split on loan versus grant. In the case of change order number 2, it was 1,763,000. $1 million of that was a grant, and 763 was structured as a loan. But if you give me a moment, I could do the exact math.
Please, that would be helpful. Are there other questions related to this? The one other question while you're thinking, Tucker, is I don't remember on anything that was a loan, what the percentage was that went with it. Go to Brooke.
I think we matched the original loan terms, which were 0.5%, and we tacked it on at the end of the original 50-year loan for, I can't remember the duration.
I think it was 7 years. Started at year 50 or
Yeah.
I do know that is something that the finance director does not want to do again, to continue to the end of the loan or continuing it out. Go ahead, Brooke.
In reality, while it feels good to do that, with the cost of money and inflation, it becomes basically a grant anyway. And so I would be inclined to just do this as a grant to get this project complete.
Is there more discussion while we wait for Tucker? I'm seeing none, so Tucker, we're holding for you.
The pressure is.
I like an awkward silence.
There must be something else to talk about. It's going to take me a moment or two.
I'll insert Penny's question. When are we going to go back to in-person meetings?
I was going to ask about the Christmas party.
We know where Penny's head's at.
I like both. I'm 8 days from a due date. That's exciting.
Very exciting.
Very exciting.
My wife is hopeful that the storm this weekend, the change in pressure, maybe we'll have a weekend baby. Quiet day at the hospital.
Brian, Chair.
Yes.
Oh, do we have other things on the agenda we could move to while Tucker's looking?
Let's see. Not really, Penny.
Okay.
We can talk about the July 11th meeting. Does that work for everybody? Well, seeing nobody reacting. Rima, that might be yours to run. Just giving you that meeting probably falls into my paternity window. Brooke, you raised your hand for just a second.
Well, now that I've mentioned the idea of just of not making this alone, might make some of the information Tucker's looking up moot if others had any thoughts on that.
Rima.
I'm inclined to just go with a grant. These loans are so complicated and tiny and, a million years in the future. Just pay for it, in my opinion.
Right. Keep going.
But where does it come from? Can we afford it? That's always my question. Can we afford it?
Well, that's another complicated question for me to ask. Can 25% of it, which is $625,000 come from former CPC funding. As one place that we do find it challenging to spend money from, because it's hard to find 80% qualified projects. But to follow up on the remaining 75%, go ahead, Tucker.
Well, so I can tell you the split on the second tranche was 57% grant, 43% loan. To answer Rima's question, we do have the funds available to us. And I'm just getting the calculation on that first part.
So just, Brian, Chair.
Yep,
Chair
go ahead.
Brian, just to follow up on what Tucker just said, is it clear that the town would not have to authorize borrowing to fund this?
It is clear, having spoken with the finance director.
Thank you.
And Meg, I saw your hand go up for a second.
Yeah, I was, shoot, what was I gonna ask? Oh, July 11th, can we do an update on the housing production plan? Like a check-in? Does that seem reasonable?
I will come back to that in just a minute, where it seems like we're deep in this one at the moment and we're getting close to something percolating. Does anybody have more questions for Tucker related to where the funding is coming from or the percentages of previous breakdowns? Is anyone opposed to the concept of this as a grant? We've heard affirmatively from two parties. Okay, Penny, I'm going to open to you. You'd like to see this as something other than a grant. Can you give us enlightenment?
That is correct. I think that the income from this project will more than support something other than a straight grant. Thank you.
Do you have any proposal other than what's there? Tucker said, let's see, if 2.5 million, and previously we did 43% times 0.43. If I'm doing this right, $1,075,000 would be the 43% on a loan, and the 57% would be the remaining balance. So I'll come to first Vic, I'll come to Brooke and then to Vicky. Brooke.
So the original loan is substantially higher than the combination of these two, the combination of the additional loans. So if we think about the income stream of the project, we could do it concurrently with the other ones rather than extending beyond, because we've gotten word from the finance director that he does not want us to go farther out in time. So, I mean, I could be persuaded.
Okay. Thank you, Brooke. To you, Vicky.
So, do you know what Brian is looking to charge for interest? I know that some of the other documents that I've worked on in the past, he, the interest was very low. Now the interest is higher. So have you had a conversation with Brian about the interest rate?
So Tucker, can you correct me if I'm wrong, please? But my understanding is that he would be prepared to extend the existing interest rate on the other loans to this situation. But you are correct that the lending environment that the town is borrowing at is significantly more expensive than it was. Where it previously was at 1% or 1.25%, it's now at 4 to 5%, depending on time and term. But I think the original loan was at 0.5 point. And I think that he's prepared to see that extended if some portion of this money is a loan. I don't see Tucker correcting me, so I think I've got that correct. Tucker, I am going to go to you because you have your hand up. And then I'll come to Chantal.
I'm sorry, Chantal was first, so go ahead.
Okay, Chantal.
Thank you. I was just wondering, what's the overall cost of this project with factoring in this additional request? And apologies if that's already been said.
No problem. From the context document provided today, 12,779,000. And that's with the assumption that some portion of the funds will likely get returned because there's likely a buffer within this 2.5 million.
And that was for 8
Um,
units?
22.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
So there's a rolling cost per square foot average of $445 a square foot, which is well under commercial market that is out there if we look at it on per square foot cost basis to other projects. Kind of as presented. So a very like an affordably built project on what else we're seeing in the marketplace based on this context document. Tucker, and then I'll come to you, Penny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I did the math correctly, for the change order number 1 and change order number 2, the breakdown is roughly 54% that was grant and 46% that was loan for those two. Obviously, the original construction cost was all structured as a loan. So on balance, for the entire 12,779, approximately 2/3 is a loan and 1/3 grant. Now that does not take into account the land cost, but that's a separate matter.
Thank you, Tucker. I think it was coming to Penny next.
Yeah, just quickly, Brian, when you quoted or Chantal asked about the 12,779,000, that was inclusive of the land. Right?
Not based on this context document that was
No.
provided today.
No,
This is,
okay,
that is the,
my
that is the
error.
construction. Yep,
Never mind. Thank you.
yep. Tucker,
Oh, sorry, my hand was still up, but I guess I might add, so, kind of all in, not including the land, we're looking at 580 as the per unit, let's say, all in number here. And Steve's done a nice job of breaking it down, further. But just for context, relative to the Six Fairgrounds project across the street, which, I think we had discussed at a recent meeting that the developers have received the award letters for the additional support that's required there. We're anticipating that project is going to go forward starting next spring. It's a different scale project, but that project is roughly $780 a unit, obviously with a lot of subsidy coming from the state and others, but relative to this project and the scale and quality, broken up into twice the number of buildings as the Six Fairgrounds project, while being 1/3 the number of units. I think all of those factors are relevant in considering this request.
thank you, Tucker. My last question would be to you, Vicky. If we were to do any portion of this as a loan, what would be the timeline and process for the loan agreements to be created, done, so then they could be signed by this group and then the funding requests go to the finance office and the warrant, so the money could be released? So I think that was something Ann mentioned. They asked it for a grant to have the money flow, so.
So, well, I have one question. Has the select board hasn't approved this yet? And so I guess I want to know when that would happen. So do we have an idea about when that would happen?
I don't, but I'll look to our select board representative.
Sorry, Brooke.
We do not meet this week, and it would be too late anyway. We have an insanely packed agenda for the 28th.
Mhm.
it seems unlikely that my chair would add this. I don't see adding it to what's going to be a 3-hour meeting on the 28th. I can't speak to it, but the soonest it would be the 28th and then possibly the following week for select board approval. And that's it in open meeting, obviously not executive session. So it's a little easier.
Thank you,
So,
Brooke. Go ahead, Vicky.
you know, we have to, I have to create some new grant and loan documents. I mean, we have the basics of the framework. It's just a matter of going through them and dotting the i's and crossing the t's. I guess, my guess is it would probably be once the select board approves of it. I mean, I could start working on the documents with the idea that, hopefully they're gonna approve it. And if I do that, then perhaps, we could get them signed maybe a week after the select board approves them. So I think we're looking probably, that July 11th meeting that the trust has actually doesn't seem too far off as far as having everything ready. Because again, we're relying on the select board approval, and then we need probably a week. We got to post it and, all of that. So I think you're looking at a week after. So I think the 11th maybe. What do you
Okay.
think? Is that what you're?
That's helpful to understand what your needs and timeline. I'm going to come to Penny, then to Meg.
Yeah, just very quickly, at the last construction committee meeting, we were really clear with each other. I thought that we were shooting for the 28th of June for the select board agenda. And they do meet July 5th, but I think, Billy, I see his hand is up. This could have to do with cash flow and keeping the project going.
Thank you, Penny. Brooke, did you want to comment on that before I come to Meg?
All I can say is I'm new to the agenda setting part of this game. So, I would hope, I think Don is if that time constraint is of the essence, then we'll get it on the agenda. I think I will ask that it be on that agenda.
Just to be clear, it's regardless whether it's a loan or a grant. It does. That's
Has to go to the board. Yeah.
I just want to be clear on that. Go ahead, Vicky.
So if you want to be on this agenda for next week, and I have a lot on there, to be very honest, you're going to have to talk to Erica like today.
Understood. Okay, I'm going to come to Meg, then Ann, then Billy. Go ahead, Meg.
Thanks, Brian. I wanted to chime in that I could be convinced that the loan would be the right route to go. I defer to people with much more experience than myself. I do think the grant seems reasonable. And I think that the cost per unit is an amazing cost per unit. And if we could get these 22 units out and put people in them by the end of the year or before next year's ATM, and hearing all that feedback that we got about coming through with deliverables and showing what we're doing. And if we prioritize municipal and school employees, I just feel like this is such a good move, big move forward for us. And I really strongly support it. And to Rima's point, if we can afford it, if this is in the budget, if this seems reasonable, if the money's there, then yes.
Thank you, Meg. Ann, then Billy. Go ahead, Ann.
I just want to speak to why we asked for it in the form of a loan. You'll recall that.
You asked for it in the form of a grant.
Oh, sorry, grant. It's because, we talked about like the minimum number of units that we need to provide for the 80% AMI and below is 6. Well, the way that we modeled this, we wanted to serve 50% AMI households, and even more of 80% AMI. So the way that we're modeling it, it's 11 units for those earning below 80% AMI. So the rent that we charge to these households is low, and we have our model of what it's going to cost to operate it, but we just can't afford to be making more debt payments with these limited amount of monthly rent that we are collecting when we're serving these low income households. So if it does go to the place where it's loans and the amount that we need to pay back for debt is greater, then we have to remodel this, and we won't be able to serve these lower income households, more lower income households. We also took the rent and used fair market rent as the maximum that we would charge for any of the units. So even if, say, you've got 150% AMI household that could afford a higher rent, we're still only going to charge them the fair market rent. So all of these caps on our rents limits what we can afford to pay back for debt. So that's why we're asking it in the form of a grant.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions for Ann on that from the board? Seeing none, I'll go to Billy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Hang on, Billy. Tucker on to Ann.
Just, Ann, do you want to expand, like, so if 11 units, like, can you give the breakdown to the board of what you plan to, the number of units serving the particular income levels?
Sure. So we've got 3 units serving 50% AMI and below, 8 units serving 80% AMI and below, 5 units serving 110% AMI and below, and 6 units serving 150% AMI and below. So, and then I'll just tell you what the bedrooms too, if you were curious about that. There's 2 3-bedrooms, 12 2-bedrooms, and 8 1-bedrooms.
Great. That's super helpful. Thank you, Ann. Anyone on that? Shanta?
Thank you. And as far as rent goes, how much are we charging, range lowest to highest for these units?
Sure.
So
So for
Let's stick
example,
with the 2 bedrooms as the consistent, because you'll have a range in that.
sure. So for a 50% AMI household, they would be charged for a 2-bedroom, $1,633 per month. And the fair market rent for a 2-bedroom is $2,618.
When you say fair market, is that where your 110% is? Or
A fair market's published by the Housing and Urban Development Department of Government. So that's just it's like AMI, it's just a published number.
so can you tell us what your 110 would be? Your 110% 2-bedroom?
It would be the fair market rent. So it would be capped out because they can technically afford higher than that. If you do like the calculations, basically when we do our calculations, it's 30% of the household's income. That's an affordable housing cost for them. So if you've got 100, you want to use it 110% household. So 110% AMI household, if you're looking at a 2-bedroom unit, then we use a 3-person household, and that household would earn $143,660 per year. So if we do the calculation, 30% of that, they could afford rent of $3,592 per month, but we think that's too expensive for them. So this is kind of our business model here at Housing Nantucket. We only charge the fair market rent for them. So then we would only charge them $2,618. And what that allows people to do is to save money for a down payment. So then they eventually can move on when there's a lottery or whatever, or a covenant home comes along, then they'll move out because they're able to save for the down payment, and then another household can use that 2-bedroom unit.
Great. Thank you, Ann. Shanta?
I just wanted to say thank you, Anne, for explaining that. I think it's really important that we, I know this information is available on your website and it's super accessible, but I think as we're having these meetings and we're discussing such large price tags, that it's important that we share that these units will be renting for significantly less than can be found on the open market. So thank you for explaining that.
Awesome. Okay, no more on that. Mr. Cassidy?
I wanted to talk about timing very quickly on the, assuming next week's meeting is very busy. The additional cash here has time. It's not critical that this is done for the June 28th meeting. What is critical is the release of the balance of the funds left from the beginning. And if that is something that can't get on the agenda or the warrant for next week's meeting, that's a problem.
Okay, thank you. I don't know whether the balance needs to get on to the select board
That's-
meeting,
if I
but
may-
maybe the warrant. Go ahead, Brooke.
Yeah, that's a matter of the finance department, the request flowing through the finance department to the treasury warrants that come to the board. So I have no control over that. That's through the finance department.
Yeah, and Ann and I had discussed, we just need Mr. Chair, you'll recall, we discussed this with the finance director in terms of the timing. So I think that part of it, I'm not aware that there's an issue. We just need to be able to furnish the invoice from Housing Nantucket for that last disbursement to the finance department. So Ann and I will circle up after the meeting today to ensure that those folks who are processing it have it timely, which is in the next day or two. So I think we're okay on that front.
Okay. Are there any new or different questions? Feels as if we've had a pretty full conversation here. Is there someone prepared to make a motion on the request of a $2.5 million continuation of funding for the project, either as a grant in its entirety or as a grant and loan combination? Rima?
I would like to make a motion that we approve additional funds for the 31 Fairgrounds Wiggles Way project to Housing Nantucket in the amount of 2.5 million as a grant.
Thank you, Rima. Brooke?
I'm going to second with a slight amendment to say not to exceed 2.5 million.
Yes.
Friendly amendments accepted by Rima. So I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion?
Does
Seeing
there
none,
need to be, sorry, does there need to be any language about preference for municipal employees or no?
We did that as a separate motion.
does it need to be, well, I recognize that do we need to tie the money to it? I don't know. Tucker, you raised your hand.
Well, I think the motion that was made before was, to investigate the possibility. I think Meg brings up a good point that if indeed this is something that we want, if it is proven possible, that it is, the motion should incorporate implementing what is possible as determined by HLC.
The only other thing, sorry, somebody who was just about to say something. Go ahead, Rima.
I would add that to my motion.
So if I might, as the person who seconded, just to restate that the motion would be to approve up to not to exceed $2.5 million as a grant for the project at 31 Fairgrounds Road, subject to Housing Nantucket compliance with approved municipal employee preference. Any municipal employee preference approved by the state authorities, DHCD/HLC. Does that sound like what we mean?
Vicky said close enough.
I think that was a question for you, Vicky, from Tucker. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't, so I'm in a little pickle. I see Mr. Cassidy's hand up, but I don't know that I can take a public on a discussion on a motion. Is that, so I'm acknowledging your hand up, but I can't take it, Billy. I'm sorry. Any other continued discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote by roll. Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
I,
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Meg Browers,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Thank you guys for.
Hey, Brian.
Oh, Dave, sorry, Dave. Whoa, sorry, Dave. Dave Iverson, whoa.
Wow.
Somebody left the meeting and everything rejumbled. I'm sorry.
I would be an aye, Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Okay, now that vote is done, Billy, I want to come back to your raised hand.
Mr. Chairman, I think this is a question for Vicky through you. First of all, hi, Vicky.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
That vote, the vote that was just taken, if there are select board members that feel that they would be in agreement but may not favor 100% grant, is this something that can be amended on the floor of the select board meeting? Or is it a
No.
yes,
We'd
no?
have to come back here. You'd have to come back to the trust.
Okie dokie.
We're a,
Thank you.
we're a happy room, Billy. That should please you.
Pardon?
We're a happy group. That should please you.
I'm very happy. I'm just, there are a couple of select board members that I'm thinking about that, anyway, enough said.
You can be
Thank you.
persuasive, Billy, if you want.
I'm gonna come to Rima and see if she has a thought, and then to Penny.
Yeah, my thought is that with the municipal employee preference that we're going for, I think that this is something that the select board should be able to get behind. That's the good cookie as far as I'm concerned, and it's great for the community. So, you know, this is what everyone's asking for, and that's what we would like to do.
Come to Brooke and then to Penny.
So I encourage my fellow Affordable Housing Trust members to come to the meeting when it's on our agenda at the select board member and explain your thinking on this. I think that would be very helpful.
Penny?
yeah, two things. One thing, that vote was just a unanimous vote, which I would think holds a greater strength. And secondly, I was going to raise the issue of attending the meeting. And Tucker, somebody's going to have to post that, right?
Yeah, we can post it.
Thank you.
I think one thing for
I'll
me
let
that-
you know what agenda it gets on, Tucker.
Yeah, I mean, you guys set your agendas tomorrow, right? For the following week. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess we are. Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know that we're late for anything.
No, and I've already sent an email.
Okay.
I want to just mention one thing for me that's something important, and that Housing Nantucket provides to the trust long before it's ready to print the marketing plan for all of the units. You know, below 80% and above 80%, long before they're ready to be distributed. So this body can provide feedback on the intent and plan. So we do understand what reasonable best efforts are as they go out into the community. Mr. Cassidy, go ahead. And then I'll come back to you. I'm sorry, he had his hand up first.
I I really have nothing to say. I was feeling a little defensive, I suppose. It was not lost on me that it was a unanimous vote of the board. I am in complete support, and I thank you for your time. I'm simply trying to look at all directions. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Vicky, with what we learned there, is there a conditional secondary voter statement that this body should consider to give the select board some latitude if need be, or?
So are you thinking that in the event that they don't want to award the grant, that you would agree to have a grant and loan? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I think we voted unanimously, and I think we'd like to see them give a grant. I think that's what the vote was. So
Right.
I just,
So I guess
otherwise it'll just come back for future further consideration, right?
we'd have to come back and have another vote done here
Okay.
with the trust.
Right.
And they may take that as a message that, you're kind of mixed on it.
No. Understood. Understood. Penny?
Yeah, Brian, I keep calling you Brian Chair. Brian Chair, this would also require a vote on the part of Housing Nantucket's board.
Right.
Okay, I just want to point that out, which is, more time.
Okay, great. Vicky,
Well-
and then Ann, you had one follow-up. Vicky?
One last thing. So if this is a grant, if it does get awarded a grant, I mean, the documentation is a little simpler, just so that, so hopefully we can get this done for, a little quicker.
Okay, great. Ann, did you have one last follow-up?
I just wanted to give a little more insight on the marketing. So there's an extensive list of outreach within the community, and then as well as within the school, the superintendent and the HR and all sorts of other departments within the municipality. And I think that if we're going to have a preference like this, like we can put something within the marketing material that like explicitly states there's a lottery for these income levels and these you need to be on our ready to rent list. But all of that's going to start, like, from what I can tell, I see the end of the year. I mean, that's when we want these units, and they are on track to be completed before the end of the year. So if we need to, we kind of like work back from there. 90 days pretty much is when we would start our advertising efforts.
Okay, great. So late August, is it reasonable that late August you're working to provide us kind of a written scope of what your marketing efforts are, so then we can provide any input, feedback, or thoughts?
Yeah, there's the affirmative fair housing marketing plan is already published, but I think there's just kind of a sample flyer in there. That's when we'll be refining the sample flyer.
Great. So that applies to your 80% and below units, and then you're going to have the 80% and above units. So I just want to make sure that we're including that in the.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all should be on one flyer.
Great. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the agenda. If I see no more on this, I'll close this and come to item 8, year-round restriction advisory committee. Tucker, or Brooke? You don't know? Is this a continuation from the previous meeting, or is there new information to supply today, Tucker?
This is a continuation from the prior meeting.
Okay, I have nothing to add today. Does anybody want to add on this item? Okay, Rima?
I think that we should determine the number of participants, get that set, and if there's any special makeup that needs to be mapped out, I think we should do that too, so we can get the ball rolling as soon as possible, in order to make get things ready for the special town meeting in the fall.
Thank you, Rima. Brooke, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I think we should form this committee. We have a scope of work for the committee. We have a consultant who's going to run it. Let's pick 7 or 9 and get this thing advertised and and set a deadline for applications. And a date by which we will do the appointing, so we can advertise the heck out of this in the community and get as much public interest in serving on this as possible. Let's get it going. So I would be prepared to make a motion, but I'll let everybody make their comment.
Okay, thank you, Brooke. I'm going to come to Meg and then to Penny.
Thanks, Brian. At our last meeting, we made a motion and approved Tucker hiring the consultant, right? So we've engaged with them. We've signed a contract with them, and they're willing to spearhead this with us, or where are we at with that consultant?
Tucker.
Yeah, so the procurement or the finance department has to go through like their formal procedure for establishing the contract with the consultant. So that's not happened technically yet, although Judy is, engaged, if you will, on the topic. I mean, I think Rima's point is exactly it. I think there's been a lot of good discussion about this group over the course of the last couple of meetings, but I think a determination really needs to be made about what is the number and is there a special makeup, and so that we can proceed with the advertising for it.
Okay, if I could just finish my thought on that, then so I don't know how or in what way she might have a part of the next steps in terms of number of members and demographics being represented, but I think I'd be interested to know if we reached out to if we still have the director of DEI or someone who could give us a reasonable expectation for representatives from all demographics on the island. Like, should we have 2 Spanish speaking members? Should we have 2 people of color? Should, whatever. And then I would also just like to advocate for having both year round and seasonal, renters and homeowners on the list.
Thank you, Meg. Penny.
Yeah, I just want to make the comment that I think we need at least 1, if not 2 people from the trust on this committee. I don't think it should be made up entirely of non-trust members. I think it needs to have some people with experience and history in affordable housing. Thanks.
Thanks, Penny. Brooke.
I'm going to recommend that we make it a 9-person group with 2 trust members to serve and the remainder of the seats at large, because Meg, as much as when you designate seats to a certain pool of people, if you don't get the applicants, then you're stuck. And I think this board's commitment to making this as diverse as possible and using as many channels of outreach as possible, perhaps through communication with the DEI director on how best to do that, will achieve that in the applicant pool. And then as we consider applicants, we can then think about how we draft a questionnaire for the applicant, which is what we did for the short-term rental work group. We asked questions that help us determine how to seat the different constituencies that we wanted to serve. And I think in that group, we designated too many seats to organizations, for instance, and not enough at-large seats. And I wouldn't want to make that mistake. I would go with at-large, and we can hone in on who we want when we look at the applicant pool.
So I thank you, Brooke. I like the numbers you're talking about, 9 and 2. I will note that the number 2 on the Barrett Planning Group's proposal is to assist with developing criteria for assisting and selecting participants for a working group to work on this project under the umbrella of the Affordable Housing Trust. So that is part of the scope of the project that was delivered to us. So Meg, I'll come to you, and then to Shanta. Maybe not Shanta, Meg. Can't hear you.
I definitely agree with what you're saying, Brooke. The at-large sounds great. I just wanted to voice my support of an internal structure that we may or may not all agree upon, that we're going for that diversity factor and the fair representation of our true island community.
Shanta?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo what Meg said. I think it's really important, just as this board isn't representative of the community as a whole. I think that when we're putting together these smaller work groups that are going to be so impactful on the island, that we need to keep that in mind. So thank you for voicing that, Meg. And as far as outreach goes, I think it's important that we don't only rely on the DEI office, but we're actively trying to reach the various communities on our own to ensure that we are pulling together a diverse pool of people. Because I think it would be an absolute disservice to our community as a whole to not do as much as we can to ensure that we have representation in this group.
Thank you, Shanta. So with that, is there interest in setting a motion for establishing the size of the group today? Brooke, is that, Rima, I'm seeing you shake your head yes. Brooke, based on your recommendation, is there a motion?
So I move that we establish a working group for deed restriction to include 2 members of the Affordable Housing Trust and 7 members of the community at large to be represented as broadly as possible. And I'll leave it at that. And then I think, having made the motion, I'll wait for a second and I'll make another comment.
Second.
Second from Rima, don't wait long, go ahead.
And then I would say we should decide who those 2 people are at this meeting and have them then work with Tucker and Judy to formulate the questionnaire and an outreach plan.
Okay, I'd be really curious what Judy's number 1 and number 2 on Judy's list is prepare for and attended a kickoff meeting with the municipal housing director and the trust and other officials determined by the town. And the number 2, developing criteria for selecting participants. I wouldn't want to select participants before the consultants involved in the process. And just to be fair to the just my thought, but I'll open that up to the group. I'll come to you, Tucker.
Yeah, I kind of liked what Brooke suggested there. I mean, I think it's important that this board have like guidance into that process, and rather than having to wait for the next trust meeting or so forth, I think it'd be great if 2 folks could be determined. I mean, Judy's going to add some good thoughts, but I think this group is likely to have some of its own thoughts, and all that together is going to end up with the best product.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any continued discussion? Meg?
Would it make sense for us to have a subcommittee meeting with Tucker before the next AHT meeting? And we can post it if we need to, so however many people want to serve on that subcommittee, and we could hash out any other details, or do we not need that?
We certainly could have if you all wanted to designate the 2 members today, we could certainly have a subcommittee meeting with Judy before the next meeting.
Okay, so Penny?
Brian, why don't you ask for volunteers first?
Okay.
Should we vote on the motion first, Brian? And
Yeah,
then
I think we vote on the motion and then look for volunteers. So the motion is to create an at-large group of 7 members and 2 trust members of the Deed Restriction Advisory Committee. So that's the motion and that was seconded. So a vote by roll. Penny Dye.
Aye.
Rima Sherry.
Aye.
Meg Browers.
Aye.
Dave Iverson.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Okay, so we have the size of the committee established in general makeup. Now, are there any volunteers for the committee? So we have 4 volunteers, Rima, Meg, Shanta, and myself. So should should the volunteers have should we vote on volunteers now, or do we have a meeting together with the consultant? I don't know how to move this forward. I would look for some advice. Penny?
I think the way to handle this is either at our, well, we want to do this now. We could vote by emailing to Tucker. Each of us could vote for 2.
Okay,
As we did on the Dickler Award.
okay. Yeah, then I think that's an option, and then my only thing is I want to make sure we understand the scope of the project as individuals from the consultant in its larger basis, but that would be my only feedback in general, but Brooke?
I would trust any of the 4 who have put their hat in the ring to represent us well on this group. And also, they're not precluded from coming back to ask advice if another member who's not been appointed has a specialty expertise.
And
Like
there's
real estate, for instance.
and there's always opportunity like to ad hoc attending a meeting.
Yep.
Okay, great. Meg?
I'd be happy to step back and let whoever else do that. I would just be really excited and interested to serve on like a subcommittee on this. So if we wanted to meet as the 4 of us with Tucker and the consultant and hash out some ideas, then we could, in that meeting, perhaps identify who of the 4 or of the 3 of you might be best suited to serve in that role. And like you said, others could be consulted on ad hoc, but I just wanted to throw out that I'm happy to step back and let other people do it. Also happy to serve, but I'd totally be willing to serve on a subcommittee for us to hash this out a little bit more if that were desired.
I feel exactly the same way. Brooke and then Tucker.
Well, it's a matter of timing. This group can't start until we appoint the at-large members. So you may as well do that. Have the 4 of you meet with Judy and figure out what representation makes sense and come back and advise us to who of the 4 of you should be appointed.
Great.
And you
Penny,
have to
then
post- you have to post it.
Right, which is okay.
Yeah, I mean, so I would request that we not establish like a separate subcommittee and then this advisory committee. Like, if we want to talk further about it, let's post another trust meeting, and those interested parties, it sounds like there would be at least 4. So there'd be a quorum, and we could discuss it and determine there.
Why don't we, Tucker, why don't we work with Judy's schedule to do that? And then whether it's the 4 or the body at large, to have that discussion.
Yeah, we'll just post it as a regular trust meeting with that really as the item, and then folks, we'll make sure that the 4 folks who are interested for sure can attend, obviously jiving with Judy's schedule.
Great. Okay. That works for everybody? Penny?
Yeah, one more question. Do we have are we having an executive session? Because I have to leave in 15 minutes.
We were hoping to have an executive session.
Okay, so we'll close advisory committee discussion for now. Tucker will come back after meeting with procurement and Judy and getting us scheduled a meeting. Other business, July 11th is the next meeting. Board comments, any board comments? Brooke?
So I'm going to ask because I'm getting communication while we're in the meeting. If we don't need to have this on the 28th agenda, it would be preferred to do it on July 5th. I think I heard from Billy that that's okay. So I would love to let my board chair know that July 5th is fine, and that gives Vicky a little more time to pull the paperwork together as well. So if, Billy, can you give us a thumbs up on that?
How about a yes?
There we go. Okay, thanks.
Great. Rima?
My computer was giving me, did we vote on that motion that,
So we voted to establish the committee
Okay.
of 9 with 2 trust members, but we are not
I just-
selecting. Yeah, we're going to have a meeting with Judy. And
no, I
then
know,
work
I know.
on-
I just couldn't remember that we voted because my computer was about to die and I was freaking out.
Got it. Okay. Meg, to you?
If possible, would we be able to add housing production plan update to next month's agenda, regardless of how thorough that update may be? But can we just put it on potentially?
I
Sure.
see no reason. Yeah, I see no reason not to add it. Okay, and with that, number 11. Looking for a meeting to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, real value of property where an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of a public body. Is there a motion?
You said it so well, I'll move it.
The only thing I need you to say is not to,
Not to return to regular session.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
By roll call, Penny Dye,
Aye.
Rima Sherry,
Aye.
Dave Iverson,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Meg Bowers,
Aye.
John Tom Murphy,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's and I. Okay, we'll see you there. Go to the other link.